I think what we'll do is go into the, we'll do some of the more Kabbalistic style class. The world is made of light energy. Light energy becomes matter. This is a fact in physics. Every physicist will tell you that light energy ultimately becomes matter. In the Kabbalah, we also say the same exact thing, that God emits light, which is called either or rishon, or it's this primordial light that God emits, and from that light, God filters out that light to create the physical world. So the world's really made of filtered out light. I can show you an example if you look at this. If you look at this stender here, so you see the shadow of my hand on the stender. So what I'm doing is filtering out light. That image of my hand on the stender is where the light isn't. I filtered out that light, and that's created an image. It's the same thing with the physical world. The physical world is made out of the filtered light of God. That God has filtered out light for there to be a physical world. If God were to put more light, this room would disappear. Okay, it would start with the minerals. So first your tables, all these wood tables would land on your lap because there would be no mineral of the metal holding up your table. If we further turned up the light, then meaning more power surge of light into the filters, then soon your table would disappear because now the world of vegetable would disappear. So would all your clothes. This room would get very interesting all of a sudden. I would be the only one wearing anything because I'm wearing a wool vest and wool pants. So I'd be the only one wearing clothing in this classroom. Okay. If we went further and then the animal would disappear, then all of our bodies would go too. You'd see the wool disappear, but so would you see the body disappear. And then all that would be left in the room would be the souls of the people in the room. Again, the world's made, our physical world is made out of filtered light. Now, what's another term for filtered light? When you filter out light, what is another term for that? Exit, say it louder. Darkness. Darkness. Filtered out light is darkness. When I filtered out the light for this and you saw the shadow of my hand, that's another term for darkness. Now, when we think darkness, when we think of the term darkness, we usually think of the negative. Like light is God and darkness is evil. Light good, darkness evil. When we think of filtered out light or darkness, we think of negative. We think of the bad, of the evil. And it's not so far off, because the more of God's light that's filtered out, the further it is from godliness. But our rabbis teach us, our sages teach us from the Kabbalah, that there are 4 levels of darkness, each one increasingly dark. The top level of darkness is called klipas noga, klipat noga, and that klipa, called klipat noga, is a neutral dark layer that is that first level of physicality. So this stender, for example, is made of klipat noga. It's made of this neutral darkness. It's being brought into existence by filtering out light so that there can be a chair, that there can be the stender, that there can be a book, that there can be a vest. It's automatically dark if it exists. Anything that exists in physicality has to be from an absence of light. So darkness isn't always so negative. There's such a thing as neutral darkness. There's neutral darkness. And the word in Hebrew for neutral darkness is mutar. Mutar, yeah? The word mutar means neutral darkness. In English, I'll put it. It's funny, I don't think I've ever written that before. It looks pretty funny. It is a tough, isn't it? The reason I wrote it is because I've never seen a word where we say saf, musar, matira surim. It always gets a nikuda. Yeah, that's why I wrote a tet. I thought that looked funny. So it's mutar, like that, but it always gets the dot. I'm trying to think, is there ever a time where it loses the dot? I don't think so. It always gets a dot. So the word mutar, anyone know the definition of the word mutar? As Ashkenazim call it mutter. What? Permissible. Okay? So the answer is that it does mean permissible, but it actually has a literal meaning. And the literal meaning for it is released. And the figurative meaning of it is permissible. 2 S's, 1 S, what do you guys say? Permissible. We use the term released for permissible. Why? Why do we do that? The word mutar literally means release. Like, for example, if you untie shoes, you're matir your shoe. You're releasing the knot. The reason why we use the word permissible is, and why we use the word mutar for permissible things, is because that particular object is released to go up. Now, what do I mean it's released to go up? The physical world, everything you see in the physical world is being beamed down from God. So, you know, this cup of water, I'll pour myself some water. This cup of water, all this H2O in this bottle is being beamed down from the spiritual realm. And there's a will of God that says, let there be this water, let there be water. There's a will of God that the minerals of this water should exist, H2O, those molecules. And for there actually to be physical water, you have to remove as much light as possible so that there can be water. Otherwise you wouldn't have water, you'd have light. So you have to remove as much as possible. But in this water is meaning it's spiritual water. In the physical world, it's physical, but above our world are parallel realms where there is a spiritual cup of water. This is a physical cup of water, and then there's a metaphysical cup of water in the spiritual realms. Now, all of the spiritual aspects of this cup of water in the spiritual realm has descended from the light and from God's will all the way down a system, a parallel system, in order to create a cup of water down here. This cup of water is permissible, or mutar. It's released for me now to raise it back to the spiritual. And if you think I mean raise it back to the spiritual cup of water, that's not what I meant. What I meant was the spiritual cup of water now is going to shoot back up to the light. Because that spiritual cup of water now is trapped. Not the physical one. The physical one's doing fine. The spiritual one's been lowered and lowered and lowered and lowered down these parallel realms until it's finally trapped in a lower spiritual realm. It wants to go home to the light. Now, I take this cup of water, and first of all, it's not stolen water. First, you got to make sure it's not stolen. Because if it's stolen, it's not part of the world of mutar. It's not released. Anything stolen is bound up. So this is released water, because it's Eshator water that's, was meant to be drunk by people, students, rabbis, in Eshator. It's permitted water. And I'm now going to make a bracha over the water, concentrating on each word. And then I'm going to drink the water. That water is now going to hydrate my body. It's going to go into my bloodstream. And that liquid will ultimately become a Jew named Yom Tov. And then I'm going to do the rest of my day with this water in my system. So what was just water is now going to become a Jew, and is then going to become a mitzvah in all the teaching I will do throughout the rest of this day and into the night. I'm also teaching for 4 hours tonight. Water goes into my system. It's going to work for me throughout the day. And now what is just H2O is going to become a Jew. It's permissible. It's released. My shoes are released. I bought these shoes fair and square. Okay? My pants are released. Pants are more difficult. They're wool. Pants need to be checked for shotness. Need to be checked for wool linen mixtures, because one of the Torah prohibitions is to mix wool with linen with flax. Wool is from the animals, flax is from the vegetables, and you don't mix those in clothing. Certain mixtures are allowed, but wool and linen are not allowed. And so wool is a little more dangerous. It could be totally bound up, not released. Generally, if a Jew buys a wool garment, he or she should first send it to a shotnez laboratory, which exists in every city that has observant Jews in it, and have it checked. And they literally check the whole garment, sometimes under microscope, to search for wool and linen mixture. Even sewed in, like let's say, the belt area of a pant is often a little stiffer. They reinforce it. So they could easily use a flax belt and then they sew it together to the pant. But once they're united, the whole pant becomes forbidden with a Torah prohibition. So you'll have a guy who would sooner die than eat pork wearing wool and linen together. There's no difference. The commandment's the commandment. Same commandment of not eating pork is the same commandment of not wearing mixtures of clothing. The same thing. So if someone who'd rather die than eat pork is wearing wool and linen while he's taking the bullet, it's like insane. So you want to treat all the commandments with the same weight, not just eating kosher. Something that's permitted is released to rise. That rising in Kabbalah is called aliyah. I know you all think the word aliyah means to move to Israel. It does mean that. And that's a major ascension, to move to Israel and start keeping the Torah in the land of Israel. Whoa, that's heavy duty. That's a major aliyah. But aliyah is what I just did with my water. And I'm doing it with my clothes, and I'm doing it with everything I touch. But first I make sure it's released. First I got to make sure it's released, that it's possible to raise it up. Now, there are other levels of dark side. That level was level 1 of the neutral dark side. But how many more levels are left? 3. There are 3 dark world levels. Their names aren't that important to know. They're just increasingly darker. They go to till real dark stuff. And those 3 dark sides are, that dark stuff is the world of the, oops, how'd I get to green? They're the world of the, no thank you. Appreciate it. It's the world of the Asur. In Hebrew, it's spelled like this. And guess what it means? Yeah, what's the opposite of released? Bound. And in parentheses, we'll put forbidden. 2 D's is right? 2 S's in permissible and 2 D's in forbidden. Forbidden. All the stuff. See, we're used to saying, oh, that's permissible and that's forbidden. Permissible, forbidden, forbidden. You guys have to start becoming real Kabbalists. There's not permissible and forbidden. It's released, to raise it, to make what with it? Good. Aliyah. It's either released for aliyah, or it's bound up. And you can't get it, you can't raise it. It's not raisable. And conveniently, we have been given a list of 300, there's the green again. Conveniently, we have been given a list of 365 negative commandments, which is very convenient for us. You guys should be very thankful of the 365. We have a very tidy list, a neat and tidy list, completely organized and explained in Jewish law. 365 bound up things that are to be avoided at all costs. At all costs. Meaning for a positive commandment, you have to give up, I think, even up to half your livelihood to pay for it. Let's say, there's no etrog in your whole country, and Sukkot is coming. And all of a sudden a guy comes in with an etrog, and he's offering that etrog for half of your wealth. I think the law is you have to give half your wealth. Now, people lived very differently throughout Jewish history, so I don't know how they apply it today. Because probably things are a little different today, because half your wealth could be, quite a lot of money for an etrog. But in those days where people were, let's say a guy had enough money for the next 3 Shabbases, so you'd have to give half of that for the etrog. I don't know what it's like today. I don't know do you have to sell your Tesla to get the etrog? Good luck driving that etrog. You can do aliyah with the etrog. You can fly with it. It's a mitzvah, etrog. Water's not a mitzvah. Etrog's a mitzvah. So you can definitely go, this thing's got it's faster than the Tesla. And it flies higher. Yeah.
Levels that go down, they can only go down, or is there a way to raise them to the next level?
They're unraisable. Unraisable. Just avoid it. You can get stuff out of there if you wound up making a mistake. We all make mistakes. If you made a mistake and you wound up, putting something in there, like for example, someone was selling sabbatical year produce. You're not allowed to sell that stuff for a profit. Real sabbatical year produce. Let's say someone's selling grapes, and they are there to earn money off sabbatical year produce, Shemitah produce. It's forbidden. You can't make money off of it. And what happened? You went and paid the money. Now it's forbidden for you to eat it. And then you go and eat it. So now you have every single little grape has gotten bound up, meaning that was just grapes in the spiritual world that now show up in the physical world. And they've already been lowered from Hashem's light all the way into a cluster of grapes. And each grape has its own kind of individuality to it. And then what happens? Some selfish, greedy guy who hates Judaism wants to make a buck off our sabbatical year produce and this holy produce. And there are plenty of rabbis who said that guy should never have even come to Israel. Because if you're going to come to Israel, you better tread lightly. God plays hardball, especially with the sabbatical year. If you look in the Torah, it says, if you don't keep my sabbatical year, you guys are out of here. And if you ask, well, what good's the land without the Jew? He says, well, look, notice, if the Jews get exiled, my land will rest, won't it? That's what the Torah says. If the Jews are exiled, my land's going to rest, won't it? Because there's no one here. So either you're going to rest it, or it's going to rest because I'm going to throw you guys out of here. It's weird. God's like, there's something about the land of Israel we don't get, because we're so brainwashed to this, people land, people land, people land. The Russians, Russia. Englishmen, England. But for some reason, Israel, unlike any other country in the world, has an independent energy to it that obviously works best with the Jews on it, but if the Jews aren't on it, it will actually do even better. It's better for the land of Israel that the Jews don't live here on the sabbatical year. But what you didn't mean to do it. You thought every place in the Jewish market was kosher. What did you know? And you paid for it, and he profited from it, and now you got this forbidden fruit. You're like Adam and Eve with the forbidden fruit. But you didn't even know. You even made a bracha on it. And he made your bracha, and you're like, oh, the produce of Israel. And you eat the grape. And now that grape that was in the spiritual realm, the spiritual grape, went like this. It just went, I'm going to get rid of the light. It just went like this. You see the light disappear from my hand? And the grape's just like, what happened to the light? And now the grape gets locked into a realm. There's a realm where things go. if a forbidden thing gets used in the wrong way, so it gets locked up in a chamber. That chamber, interestingly, is a substrate that your soul has to make it through on its way up. When you die, your soul moves through a substrate, and you have to get through the substrate. It ain't easy getting through the substrate. It could take time, and there's no time, so it's even worse, because at least, if you stub your toe, it's a matter of time before it's going to feel better. There's no time. So every second, they say, is worse than your worst thing that could ever happen to you in this world, because it's no time, so it feels like all time. Anyway, but your soul has to make it through the substrate. Now, it's not a random substrate, this thing we go through. It's not a random substrate. It's built of your own stuff. Meaning, you sleep in the bed you make. It's kind of cool. Meaning, unlike other traditions, other religions that have all this eternal damnation and all this kind of random stuff that happens to you for being a bad boy, in Judaism, it's just your soul trying to make its way through all the stuff it locked in, meaning all the stuff that lost its light. It gets locked into the substrate realm that your soul has to somehow get through. Every grave. Yeah, every grave. And it's got boxing gloves on it because it's PO'd. This is an angry grape. This grape is not happy about all of this. So it's wearing a pair of boxing gloves. And it's just when you die, all of a sudden your soul's making its way through the substrate, and there's this grape just going and you're like, I never saw a grape with boxing gloves before. And he's like, and then you're like, I remember that day at the Machane Yehuda Shuk. Yee, I didn't just eat one. Whoa. You see the camera goes above that grape, and you see a couple other grapes just like this. Waiting their turn. Yeah. We got to be careful down here. This world's dangerous. It's dangerous. Very dangerous. There could be cow. Can you imagine a whole cow with a sawed-off shotgun or something? Then you got girls. Then you got girls with chainsaws. How'd you like to meet a girl with a chainsaw? Like to meet her? Yeah, forbidden girl with a chainsaw. Yeah. It ain't pretty, man. It's really frightening. And whatever. So there's a couple ways to deal with this, by the way. Since we're on the subject, I'll just help you all out here. There's a couple ways to deal with this. One of the things you can do, it's called teshuvah. Okay, it's tshuva. It's 4 steps. You just have to. It's this 4-step process. You stop, say, regret, commit. Stop, say, regret, commit. Everyone say that? Stop, say, regret, commit. Well, let's practice it again so you memorize it. Stop, say, regret, commit. One more. Stop, say, regret, commit. Now by heart. Stop, say, regret, commit. So whatever it is you're doing, you stop doing it. Number 2 is you tell God, God, I did it. Number 3 is you regret it. You know how you regret it? It's very simple. See, we have a principle in Judaism that the only reason you do anything wrong is because you had temporary insanity. Think about it. Think about it. If you had absolute clarity of God, which means you're sane, what is the difference between sanity and insanity? You ever thought about this? Sanity means you're in touch with reality. Someone who's sane is in touch with reality. What's insanity? Out of touch with reality. So, given that there's a God, and given that there's a Torah, and given that you're a Jew, so if those are given, so in touch with reality, if you're in touch with reality, so you're going to act sane, and you're going to do mitzvahs, and you're going to avoid the forbidden things, the bound up stuff, you're going to be great. But what happens? Do we always walk around with clarity? No, we lose our clarity all the time. And we have this lack of clarity. What's another term for lack of clarity? It means you're out of touch with reality, which is otherwise known as insanity. And so we go temporarily insane, and we wind up doing stupid stuff when we're out of clarity. That's why it's so important to have clarity. You got to have clarity. And if there's certain things that give you more clarity, you got to do those things. You can't sabotage your own life. So if certain things give you more clarity, like, for example, being connected to a Rebbe. I bet you no matter what city you guys are living in, if you're not living here or here, no matter what city you live in, I promise you there's some really holy rabbi there. And he probably even has a weekly class you could go to. And you know he's there, he knows you're there, but you wind up skipping all the time. Wrong or right? You know, is there someone there? What's his name? Rabbi?
I forgot his name.
That's really bad.
But my little brother goes to church school there, so I don't.
You know there's a rabbi there.
Yeah.
Does he is he open once a week to a class or something? Yeah. You got to connect yourself to him. It'll just be that much more clarity. And you go every week. One week you can't. You were busy. You had an appointment. So you know what you do? You go for the first 5 minutes. You tell him, I'm here only because I don't want to miss a week, but I'm not really here because I got to be somewhere in 5 minutes. He'll understand. Good. Becoming consistent. That's good. A little consistency. You know how many classes I've been in for 5 minutes? Because it's my weekly thing, but I was busy. I've been at weddings where I have to officiate at a wedding that's coinciding with the class I go to, where my Rebbe gives class. So I either go right before, or I go for the last 5 minutes, but not to miss it. Not to miss it.
So you also have a Rabbi?
Of course. Yeah. He has a Rebbe too. Yeah. We're all in a chain of Rebbes. We're all in a chain. Everyone has a Rebbe. Except for you guys. And who needs it the most, by the way? You guys are crazy, man. You guys are crazy. I'm the first one to know I need a Rebbe, you know. I need a Rebbe, you know. Imagine I need a Rebbe. You guys really need a Rebbe. Yeah. If you're interested, I have a class that's gotten quite a I've gotten some really good feedback. It's on YouTube. It's called Finding a Rav. Finding a Rav on YouTube. It has, it really explains what it's about. And it's not what you think. Meaning having a Rav, you probably think, oh no, I got this like cop watching me all the time. It's not like that at all. Not like that at all. This is like, if you had $1 million to invest, you would definitely get a consultant to counsel you, to mentor you. You don't want to blow it. That's what a Rebbe is. Your biggest investment isn't $1 million. Your biggest investment is your life. And real Rebbes will guide you. And they're not going to think you're on some level you're not. They know exactly where you're at. They'll guide you right where you're at. They'll help you grow. They'll push your comfort zone a little bit, not a lot. They know who can get pushed harder, who can be pushed less. They don't want to, if they push you too hard, you're gone. So what good do they do? And now they're busted for whatever trouble you get into. Real Rebbes know what they're doing. In every city, God has placed Rebbes everywhere. You know, he's just like, it's like a salt shaker. He sprinkled a little Rebbes on every Jewish community. Yeah? And I think the cap fell off in Jerusalem, though. Anyway, one of the things you can do is do tshuva. And you'll notice, by the way, amazingly, when we do tshuva, part of the tshuva process is to go down, you bend down, and you take your fist, and you say these different words that are according to the alphabet, because those who know a little Kabbalah, the whole world's created out of these letters. Hashem made the world out of these alphabet letters. And so this grape that got the lights shut down on it, got the light turned off on it, is made of the alphabet. But now it's gotten trapped down there. So we go down and we say Ashamnu, Bet, Bagadnu, Gimel, Gazalnu, Daled, Dibarnu Dofi. We go down into the dark side. We dip into the dark side. Now, this is heavy work. This is like Indiana Jones, Raiders of the Lost Ark, or Temple of Doom. Most people don't know how to do this properly. For the rest of us, we're just like dung, 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 dung. You know, Yom Kippur, dung, dung, dung. You wind up with a bruise, and you don't know what you're doing. there are people who really knew how to do this stuff. For this reason, when it's on the yort side of one of those Rebbes, and he's a Rebbe of your community, you don't do it on that day. You know why? Because right now he's having every year, every day on the year, every anniversary of one's death, you go up a level. And not only do you go up a level, but everything you touched in this world goes up a level. So if you were a rabbi of a community, so they're all part of your, they're in your box at the game. The executive boxes where you can watch the game from. Your community's in your box. So every year that you get your aliyah, they go up with you. Everybody goes up with you. And so that's a good day to stay out of the way. Don't go down there. It's the yort site. It's the year anniversary of that person's who was a leader of the community. He's getting his aliyah. That means everything's coming up with him. And it's a good day to stay out of the way and let it and go up for the ride on that particular day. Another way to deal with that is try not to die the day before Yom Kippur. It's a lot better to die the day after Yom Kippur. But Yom Kippur is a nice slate cleaning. It doesn't clean everything, but it cleans off. There's residue, but it cleans you up pretty good. So better to die after Yom Kippur. There are other ways of dealing with it. This is a weird one, but for some reason, Kabbalistically, if you're killed for being a Jew, you don't have to go through the substrate. You get to skip it, which is pretty interesting, strange. Now that doesn't mean you get to put on a T-shirt when you're 119 years old and walk through the Arab quarter with a T-shirt that says "I hate Arabs" on it. Okay, it's hoping someone picks you off so you don't have to go through it. Don't do that on your 120th birthday. Okay, that's suicide. And that's worse. We haven't gotten into that. Suicide, you go to there's a whole other realm for people who commit suicide. That's, life looks exactly like this world with all its problems and all its issues. It looks exactly like this world, only no one can see you, and you stay in it. You stay in this world. Yeah. So much so that there wouldn't be Kaddish, there's no Shiva, there's none of the normal mourning things that we do to raise the soul. Another way to slide through it quicker for men is tefillin. Tefillin, for some reason, if you put on tefillin, preferably daily, for some reason it makes the whole process easier. So tefillin's better for that, getting through it. Tefillin's, that's one. Arya Kaplan writes about that. And tzitzit is not for that. That's for tefillin. Another way to shoot through it faster is leave behind offspring. Okay? Not everyone gets to have kids, but if you leave behind offspring, it's very helpful because all the mitzvahs that your offspring do sends you up quicker. It gets you out of there quicker. Especially male offspring saying Kaddish. Female offspring can also say Kaddish, but only when there's a minion already saying it. They can say it. They don't say it very loud, but they say it. But male offspring saying Kaddish. So you can meet people who are so interested in this little insurance policy that they try to have several male offspring. Not that you can try to have male offspring, but they'll keep having kids as insurance because in case one doesn't make it, they got another kid who's going to say Kaddish for them. But Kaddish is another way to streamline the process for someone who passes away. So it's good to leave behind a good legacy. It can be anything, though. It could be just donations you made to a community, and that after you pass away, they'll have you in mind for community activities and stuff, mitzvahs that will be done, Torah learning stuff.
What if you transplant your organs when you die?
That's beyond the scope of this discussion right now, but that has to do with the resuscitation of the dead.
Just wondering if that organ saves someone's life and makes it easier.
Oh, like that? Oh, I've never heard anything like that. It's a bit of a controversy, organ donation, because of the belief in the resuscitation of the dead. But halachically, there's no problem with organ donors. it's considered a mitzvah. But you get some people who are like scared they're gonna like not, they're gonna come back to life when Mashiach comes, and they're gonna be like missing a kidney or something. But none of these organs escape the great. None of these organs can survive anyway in death. So what's the point? Like, let someone else live off the organ. Our Kabbalists teach us already that the resuscitation of the dead in the times of Mashiach comes from the bone in the back of your head where the tefillin knot goes. Everyone feel that bone? That bone is, you're reconstructed off the bone. It's called the lose bone. And that's how you're reconstructed. And I don't think anyone's ever donated a lose bone to anyone. It's a lose bone donor, you know. So, I mean, maybe if they donated their head, it's a head donor. For someone particularly handsome, head donor. One of the great leaders of Israel, really one of the greatest leaders of the generation, lives in Tzfat. His name's Rabbi Koenig, which is Yiddish for king, Rabbi King. Rabbi Koenig at one point came up with, he had a terrible lung disease, and he suffered from that lung disease for 18 years. And it finally got to the point where he wasn't going to make it. Now, this is one of the great leaders of Israel, one of the great rabbis, internationally known rabbis, and leading the Tzfat community. It was a big deal to lose Rav Koenig, very big deal. And so what happened was he was put on a donor list in America because Israel's just not a big enough population for lung transplant. So he was moved to America in his last months of his life, and with the whole world praying for him to get a donor, he was in a house. It was Shabbat, and there was a Gentile housekeeper there to answer phones just in case it was the donor, and lo and behold, that Shabbat there was a phone call. He was raced on Shabbat down to Manhattan, to Columbia, I think, and he got one of the greatest pairs of lungs on the planet. An 18-year-old top-level football quarterback who threw the champion pass to, in the final game, the championship game, he throws the pass, it's intercepted. He made a bad pass, bad choice. It's intercepted and the other team wins the game, and he took his life. They harvested his lungs immediately. They brought his lungs to New York. And the next thing you know, Rabbi Koenig has the highest level pair of lungs available on the planet. And it turns out the day that he had his first lung issue 18 years earlier was the birthday of this boy. Think God knows what he's doing? Literally, there's a pair of lungs that were created for the Rabbi and cared for 18 years. And then perfectly, right before we lost the Rebbe, kid, there's just some random kid, it was Louisiana or something, takes his life, his lungs, next thing you know, they're Rav Koenig's lungs. And you can go see him in Tzfat. I have people going to him this Shabbat.
And the fact that he committed suicide has nothing to do with the halacha?
They were
able to use his lungs?
Yeah, no, it doesn't.
Still say
Does the boy still have to go through the levels?
He has his own, everyone has their own thing they're going to deal with. But but he'll probably be in that parallel realm. It's called the Kafakela. And people who commit suicide are in the Kafakela, and they stay in that parallel realm forever. There's really not, there's a couple ways out, but none of those ways out of the Kafakela are too accessible. There's ways out, but they're not simple ways out. And we don't have too many people around today who know how to get someone out from the Kafakela. There was a movie that was made about the Kafakela. I think it was called What Dreams May Come, which was a popular movie a couple years back, which is bizarre. They got it exactly right. They perfectly, in this movie, Anyone saw the movie What Dreams May Come? They perfectly nailed the concept of the kafakela. And it turned out that it was a man who was in love with his wife, who she committed suicide, and he went back to get her. He found his way into the kafakela to go pull her out, which is not something any husband can do. It would be only like a serious Kabbalistic type person could get someone out of there. Now, there's a couple ways out of there. We're not going to go into the other ways, but let's just go here for a second. So the bound stuff, not only does it cause the spiritual grape to get bound up, but it also has an impact on you. You yourself get bound up. Meaning when you're dealing in bound up stuff, you yourself get bound up. It creates what you'd call maybe spiritual cholesterol or a spiritual plaque. You wind up with like a film that covers up one's natural spiritual vision. This is one of the beauties of learning Torah in Jerusalem, is your system's already made more or less of kosher food, because you are what you eat. And because you're now eating released products, everything you eat here in Jerusalem, unless you're like really a bad boy or girl, most everything you will eat here will be released. And because you're involved in eating all released stuff, your soul is becoming more and more permeable to the Torah you're learning. Your spiritual ability to connect in prayer is getting increased. Whereas when someone is involved in the world of the Asur, so not only they touching bound up stuff and involved with bound up stuff, but they themselves are getting bound up, and they lose their spiritual sensitivities. So it's particularly rough. It's particularly nice being a teacher in Jerusalem. It's particularly rough when I travel, go to places like Denver, and other cities around the world where obviously if I'm speaking to the observant community, so I'm speaking to people who are released. Yeah, they're in the released realm. But, I travel often for speaking to people who are in the bound up world quite a bit. And you have to be like a surgeon, a spiritual surgeon, to somehow cut around all the fat that's covering up the heart to, get to that spot. You have to be like a super technician to be able to somehow get in there and give a class that's going to touch people who have been living in the world of the bound up. Now, we're going to switch gears. The gears we're going to switch is to understand what happens when a Jew gets inspired by Judaism and he's really turned on and he just wants to do the world of the mutar, the release stuff, and he wants to do beyond the mutar, he wants to do mitzvahs. Meaning mutar is a slice of pizza. Bound up is pepperoni pizza. Okay? Mutar is just a slice of pizza. But higher than that is a mitzvah, the etrog, shaking that lulav in the etrog, putting on the tefillin, keeping Shabbat, doing all these things, having any positive command, tzedakah. Any positive commandment that you do is going to turbocharge you. Now what happens is there are people who get so inspired Jewishly that they decide they are done with the Asur. They're just drawing a line in the sand and they're just saying, I'm not going there anymore. I'm just not going there anymore. Now, what gives the dark side, this is neutral dark side and this is the serious dark side. What gives the dark side its life? Where's it exist from? What gives it its life force? No. So what's that? Excellent, Josh. God gives good. God gives the dark side its life. Everything comes from God. It's not like other religions that say like dark side's like some other entity. Everything's from Hashem. God created the dark side so that you'd have free will. Because there's no dark side, you have no choice. You have no choice, you have no power. You can't earn your relationship with God if there's no choice. So God created a dark side so that you can be empowered with choice for good, choice for life, choice for light, to live in the side of light. The dark side gets its power via God, via the light. Now that light comes down and down and down and down and down, but eventually it hits the world of mutar, and then this mutar world, the world called mutar, is a semi-permeable world that it allows up and it also allows down. So the dark side pulls its energy force, its life force, from the mutar world. This whole semi-permeable realm it's permeable. You can raise stuff, but also the dark side gets its life force from it. It's fed from it. The highest point of the side of light, the highest point of the mutar world is, you ready for this? You guys tell me, what's the highest thing in the physical world? What's the highest thing in the physical world? Kotel, okay, very good. You're going Jewish, that's good. I was going Jewish too. Okay, that's high. What else is high? What can be higher than the Kotel? Space? I don't mean geographically high. I mean, what's the highest thing in the spiritual realms of the mutar? Anything. Anything in the physical world. Because you can bet that the dark side's going to want to pull from it. It's trying to get life force. It's got to suck life force from somewhere. God doesn't love it, so God's not like sending it, shovelfuls of life force. It's got to suck it out of the mutar side. It's got to suck it out of the neutral darkness. So I'm asking you guys, what's some of the higher stuff that the dark side's going to want to suck life out of it? People, okay, good. No, that's what I'm looking for. Which people? Jews, excellent. Jews, ready for this? Jews are the highest source. You know how there's like high source of protein, high source of like calcium and stuff? One of the highest sources of calcium is sesame seeds. So Jews are the highest source of life force for the dark side. Sounds weird, but they are. Now it has a lot of different sources to suck its energy, but there's nothing higher than a Jew to suck its energy from. But how's the dark side going to siphon off life force from a Jew? The answer is, find a Jew who doesn't keep halacha. Find a Jew who dabbles in the dark side. If you can find a Jew who dabbles in the dark side, there's Jews who dabble in the dark side. There's other Jews, they don't even know the 365. They never studied it. They were raised in synagogues that don't even discuss such subjects as forbidden. They don't know anything about it. So that's perfect for the dark side. That is a Las Vegas smorgasbord for the dark side. Because here we got a Jew, a direct descendant of Mount Sinai, as holy as the high priest. There's no difference between a Jew in the dark side. I mean, he may have what I call the spiritual cholesterol. He may have a thick film between him and spirituality, that he's lost his spiritual sensitivities. But intrinsically, that Jew is just as holy as the chief rabbi of Israel. So here, the dark side's got a nice spot to pull from. It's a Las Vegas smorgasbord of life force going into the dark side. But what happens when that Jew suddenly goes turbo, takes a trip to Jerusalem, gets all involved in like Torah and mitzvahs? He's going to Rav Kav's class. He's going to Rabbi Berger's class. He's going to Rabbi Yom Tov's class. He's going to all these different classes. And he's just like, wow, this stuff's really making sense to me. Gee, I find my life more meaningful all of a sudden. You know what? I'm staying for Shabbat. I'm going to someone's house for Shabbat. I'm going to have Shabbat dinner in Jerusalem. Goes down to the kotel. You got to pray first. You go to the kotel. Next thing you know, he's dancing around the kotel, and he's just like, this is the greatest experience of my life. Yeah, as he's dancing around in front of the kotel, And he gets to the Shabbat table, and it's just like, whoa, it's a spiritual experience like he's never had. You check it out, week after week, he's staying, he's something you do with a ticket, plane ticket. He's extending his ticket. Now, all this time, the dark side, which has been enjoying its Vegas smorgasbord, all this time, he's taken this like gigantic valve, and he's been just going like, slowly closing the valve. He's closing it. He's closing it. And each week, the dark side's like, who turned out the lights? Each week, more and more and more, until he finally makes the phone calls to his parents and says, I'm learning in yeshiva now. Like, I want to just keep learning Torah for a while. What about your career? Yeah. I'm going to deal with my career later. Right now, I am here to learn the Torah. Like, let me learn Torah for a while, then I'll go back to my career. And as he hangs up the phone, that giant valve that the dark side's been living off of just goes like, and it's just like, lights out. And the dark side's like, who turned out the lights? What happened? Now, do you think the dark side's going to go down easy? You think the dark side's going to be like, okay, let's go find another Jew? No way. Every ounce of the dark side is specifically set up for that Jew. It's a tailor-made relationship where that dark side doesn't have another Jew to go to. This is that dark side. That aspect of the dark side, this is its life force. And now it's stuck. How is it going to get back its life force? What's it going to do? And what happens is this Jew now becomes hunted. He's hunted by the dark side. But that's okay, because this Jew is fortified. He's in yeshiva. He has a Rabbi. He's learning the Torah. He's being fortified and fortified and fortified, and he's bigging him, bigger, 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 and he's up from 4 to 5 in the morning, and he's fortified. Putting on his tefillin, his tzitzis, he's protected. What's the dark side to do? So it's got a couple actions, a couple lines of fire to get back its good stuff, or bad stuff. Well, it's good stuff from Hashem. It's got a couple options. Option 1, get the turbo Jew guy. Get him to do one sin. Just one sin. Just get him to do one little thing. So you might ask, like, what's a Las Vegas smorgasbord to one little, hot dog on a stick? What good is one thing? What good's that? And the answer is that if you can get someone to do one thing wrong, they usually have, it's such a big hit emotionally. He starts saying things to himself like, you're dirty, you're no good, you're a piece of garbage. Who are you to even do tshuva anyway? How could you have done this? They'll have such a negative litany of statements against themselves for one little thing that they'll wind up doing a bunch of other things too. There's something about doing one thing wrong that can lead to a lot of things wrong. So that's one way the dark side gets him back to the smorgasbord. Now, do you think there's such a thing as a guy who's so holy that doesn't fall even once? Of course he's going to fall. What's the way we deal with the dark side trying to get you to do one thing wrong? Answer is, if you fall and you do one thing wrong, get up quick. Yeah, get up quick. Do these 4 steps. Stop, say, regret, commit. Do it quick. Get it done. Get back on your feet. Do not stay there. It's like when you park on someone's bumper by accident You know how you always pull up a little bit? Don't stay on the bumper. If you hit the bumper, pull up. Just get yourself up and out of there. Oh, what you do after, the next day when you're like, oh man, I can't believe I did that. How could I have done that? When you get there, you'll say to the dark side, oh, nice try. Nice try making me feel all bad about this. Like I'm some kind of like instantly this bad, I'm like this horrible scumbag now because I did one thing wrong. No, I'm not going there. Yes, I blew it. Okay, I'm doing tshuva. I'm not that bad guy. I made a mistake. It's over. Mistake's over. Stop saying we're going to commit. I'm out of there. No way. You get that? You park on the bumper, you pull off the bumper. So if that guy gets attacked by the dark side and all it tries to do is get him to do that little thing wrong, you got to catch yourself with all the negative voices in your head and remind yourself, that's the dark side trying to get you down. You just jump right back up. You do tshuva on that one thing. You keep moving. Give you another hint to keep moving, that a lot of what motivates a person in their Judaism is they want the Shabbos table. Have you guys ever been to Shabbos tables? You ever been to a Shabbos table where like the way the husband and the wives connect to each other, the kids around the table, and you're just looking at that and you're just like, I want that. I want that. You ever been there? You said you want that? Yeah? You ever had that meal? And you wanted it, right? I want that. So I'll give you another trick. Another trick is to remind yourself, if you ever do something stupid and fall, well, if you were to keep going with all those negative voices, do you realize that the chances of you losing having that Shabbos table, the chance of you losing that Shabbat table get much higher? Because if you go into a downward spiral and you keep blowing it because of those voices in your head about yourself, the chance of losing that Shabbat table get very, very real. And believe me, today, many people never achieve that Shabbat table. Probably most of you in this room you're not even in the pool of dating a person who runs a Shabbat table like that. You have to first get to the pool of people who have Shabbat tables like that. We all think that just because we saw a wonderful Shabbat table that's what we're going to get. No. Girls who run homes like that don't date guys who haven't spent a significant amount of time learning Torah and yeshiva. It's just, you're not in the pool. And they don't need a lot of time. If you're in young 20s, a lot of time. Mid-20s, less time. Late 20s, a month or two. But they need to see on your resume that Torah is more important to you than money. They have to see that because they're not willing to, it doesn't matter what kind of nice dress you can buy her, it doesn't matter what kind of jewelry you can buy her, it doesn't matter what you can do for her. If you're going to mess up her kids, which she's going to be sacrificing for, if she has to protect her kids from her husband, you're just not in the pool. They're not going to date someone like that. And they don't care how much money you have. So to get a girl like that, you got to have yeshiva in your resume. But that's not our subject. The subject is that one of the ways it tries to get you is to do one thing wrong. But here's the other one. You ready for this one? This one's rough. You ready for this? Depression. Depression. It'll try to get you down. Because there's a Kabbalistic reality that someone who does mitzvahs depressed, the mitzvahs go to the dark side. Someone who does mitzvahs depressed, the mitzvahs go to the dark side. Can you imagine putting on tefillin and it goes to the dark side? Can you imagine keeping Shabbat, it goes to the dark side? Can you imagine learning Torah and it's going to the dark side? Meaning you just upped the dark side's, you just opened the valve double by being depressed while doing commandments. Now, don't take this so far that you'd think, well, since I'm depressed, I shouldn't do commandments. Don't go there. We need to practice commandments all the time. Even if you're depressed, and even though it's going to the dark side, you'll somehow get it out. You'll do your deep sea diving later for getting stuff out of the dark side. For this reason, and listen to this and never forget what I'm about to tell you, people who get stronger in Judaism and start shutting the valve on the dark side, must be vigilant for their personal joy. Vigilant for your personal joy. You write down 5 things that bring you joy, and you do them vigilantly. You never drop them. You do not sacrifice things that bring you joy. I don't care if it's music, I don't care if it's sports, I don't care if it's writing, I don't care if it's creativity, I don't care if it's making money. Whatever brings you joy, you never give that up. Never. I don't care how frum you get, I don't care if you got a black hat bigger than the ceiling in here. You don't stop doing the things that bring you joy. So we talked about the 2 ways the dark side tries to get it smorgasbord back. One is get you to do one little wrong thing, and the answer I told you, stay focused on your Shabbos table, jump back up, pull off the bumper, just do tshuva on the spot, and tell that voice in your head, I'm not listening to that. Just because you got me down once doesn't mean I'm down now. I'm getting back up. I'm pulling myself back up. It's like a boxer who got knocked out, he gets up. I'm getting back up. And the other one was, it tries to get you depressed, because if it can get you depressed and do the mitzvahs from a depressed state, it's back in business. In a bigger business than it had in the first place when you're doing the wrong things. Your job, be vigilant for your joy. Vigilant for your joy. You've got to keep a basic level of joy all the time, and whatever it takes to keep you in a joyous state is what you got to do, no matter what is going on. Even the 3 weeks of mourning, you got to keep your level of joy up. Okay? Shalom, everyone. Have a beautiful day. It was a pleasure teaching you.